Hello, welcome to the Innovation Series. This module is about one of the crucial aspects of design thinking. Design thinking, as you know, is a methodology that allows you to identify a problem and frame the problem very creatively, and also solve the problem in a very creative manner. Now, in the design thinking arc, as we had mentioned earlier in a design thinking module, one of the first steps is to understand the problem. And there are many techniques, but what I'm going to teach you about is one of the techniques that has proven itself out time and again, and it's called need finding, but you'd also hear it by the name of ethnography, because ethnography is the term that cultural anthropologists use, and we designers have stolen the tools from them. Now, need finding at a higher level, what is it doing? It is saying that the designer, even if they have been given a brief, or you think you know the problem, you're putting yourself in a position where you say you do not really know the problem. You're saying, let's go find out what the problem really is and what the real need you're trying to solve. And this is a crucially important component, because what you find out here starts the ball rolling down one face of the mountain. So if you find, if this particular process is not done well, you will have an inadequate lock on what the problem is, and you'd go off and spend a lot of time, maybe creatively, solving the wrong problem, right? So let's make sure that we do the right thing and not just do things right. Okay, let's figure out what the right thing is, and in order to do that, there is a certain way in which you approach a design challenge. So need finding is gathering very deep human insights that can be used to frame the problem and design solutions. Now, why are we saying that it is deep human insights? Actually, all sorts of insights are important. The need could be a resource flow issue. It could be the fact that the soil doesn't have enough nutrients, or what have you. And all those are important. But the reason why we are emphasizing on the human element is because that's where most of the problems go wrong, and that's also where most of the solutions are. So let's emphasize on trying to understand what the human issues are. Now, humans are very difficult to understand. They are very complex. Human systems are very complex. Human behavior is very complex. So it's very confusing unless you have the right tools. So what I'd like to give you today are some very simple principles that can get you started. Okay. Now, here is a picture of an iceberg, and like everybody knows, most of the iceberg is under the surface, and all you see is over the surface is this. This is a metaphor for what we are trying to find, because what you see very easily is the part that's sticking above the surface. This is what people will say. They will tell you what the problem is. This is what is easily discernible to the eye. But what you're really after are these, is what is actually there, what is driving the manifestations that are easily visible. And the thing to note out here is that sometimes, by speaking to people, you can't just go by their words, but because they don't know what's driving them. It is your job as a designer to figure out what's driving them. So you fundamentally, what you're doing is you're observing, you're going and speaking to people, and you're hearing what they have to say, but you're also seeing what they're doing in the context of what they're doing. But what you're really after is, what are they thinking and what are they feeling? Okay. Now, the part that's on the top is explicit. It's what people will easily be able to state. They'll be able to state that I would like more money. I would like to send my children to school. I would like my crops not to fail. I would like to have the government do something such that I don't have to get into this conflict situation where those people took my land away, etc. That's the part that they would find very easy to state. What is they would find very hard to state are things that are tacit, which you think that is taken for granted, or it's implicit, where they're actually saying one thing but they mean something else, And it's implicit in the statement that, look, we are caught in a poverty trap that is being driven by these forces. Here is how I'm thinking, here's how my neighbors are thinking, here's what the people who are powerful in the community are thinking. They won't think to lay it all out for you. It's your job to piece it all together. Latent needs are ones that people don't even know exist. And if you, as a designer and a design thinker, can hear what people are saying and look at their unmet needs and their desires and what motivates them, etc., you can come up with an understanding of what is a latent need, because if you serve the latent need, then and you come up with a solution to their latent need, there will be a very fast uptake, and they'll say, this is exactly what we needed, but they didn't know how to communicate that. Okay, so this is quite difficult. So how do you do this? This is not trivial, but it turns out that there is a technique to it, and it's not a complicated technique. And just by being a part of social circles and having friends and having grown up in families and so on, it turns out that we have a lot of these skills already. We just have to direct them in right ways, right? So first and foremost, you have to go out and speak to users and beneficiaries. The people you want to actually change their lives or bring the benefit, you can't be sitting way out there and not speak to them. You actually have to go in, because it's in the context of their lives that the solutions are going to play out. You observe what they're doing. It's not, you don't just interview them. You see how they're going through their day. You see what their farming practices are. You see how they're collecting water, how they are interacting with the entire institution of money. How are they resolving conflicts? You observe. As much as possible, it is important to immerse yourself in the stakeholders' environment so that you are gaining empathy. It's extremely important for a design thinker not just to know and be able to characterize, but feel what they feel. Empathy means that you can walk in the other person's shoes. You know how they think. Because when you're designing, you need to be able to understand how they think and how they feel, and what are the constraints within which they are working. And so you have to immerse yourself in that environment in order to really understand. And again, it's very important to keep in mind that the human needs, once you've locked in on them, is actually interplaying with other things, such as what is the economic system that is going to drive your solutions, and what might be some technological solutions if technology is called for. Technology is a very kind of a broader way of looking at things, but ultimately you're saying, why would people desire it? Is it viable? Is it feasible? And once you find a combination of all those three, then you have the makings of a good solution, right? But the human needs is where you start. And because the entire design thinking starts with the human needs, this part of it, the need finding and the ethnography, is supremely important. So how do you do it? In order to do this, there are certain very simple principles you follow. And first and foremost, when you go, you will find very little information if you read out from a survey and a list of questions. That mechanism is a good mechanism, but the entire thing of reading out from a survey is useful when you are ascertaining something which is very bounded. But what you're trying to find out here is what's going on in their mind, so you don't even know what you don't know. So first and foremost, people are not going to be able to tell you anything, and they will refuse to divulge what's happening in their minds unless you establish a personal connection. One of the best ways of establishing a personal connection is to dissolve any level differences and be in the same level as the other person, and genuinely care about the other person. If you genuinely care and you make a personal connection, then the other person also opens that channel up, and you can find out a whole lot more about what's happening, right? So you can see that in this case, this person is a researcher who's laughing with the person who she's studying, but they are drinking tea together, and this is in rural India. and she'll find out a whole lot more about what's going on in her life, right? The other thing is that no matter how much you know, it is very important to occupy a naive mindset. So in this case, the problem happens to have to do with cook stoves and wood firing cook stoves, and this is a project in Myanmar where the most common way of cooking is the three stone stove, and if you think that it is all about fuel efficiency and not having smoke, etc., etc., but you might find that the person only cares about how quickly the rice gets cooked. And unless you can offer them a solution where the rice gets cooked faster, it doesn't matter what the other features are, and you might have come up with a fantastic engineering solution. That's the first thing that they care about, which is, does it cook rice fast? Okay? So it's very important to assume the beginner's mindset. This is essentially a very profound trick, but it's a very important thing, which is to do a root cause analysis. Instead of just taking the answer for how it's given to you, you ask the question why multiple times in order to understand what the real problem is. This is a hospital, a small clinic in rural India, and all the glasses are broken. It's in a state of disrepair. And if you keep asking the people, why is it in this way, you come to the bottom of the problem, which is that the doctors have much more lucrative practices elsewhere and do not make any money here. And because it's in disrepair, nobody comes here. And so finally this gets completely unused. It's a whole government scheme that a lot of money is being spent on, completely useless, right? You have to get to the bottom of the problem. Now, you also have to find out what's going on under, just like the root cause analysis, but through observation. So if you go in and you're keeping your eyes open, so here is a hospital, and you see the sign out here which somebody has written with a hand which says working. So as an ethnographer, you'd say, why is this sign here? Why is there a sign which says it's working? Shouldn't everything be working? And then you find out that this place actually finds it very hard to, it's a hospital that finds it very hard to buy new equipment. So they have a whole stack of equipment where they cannibalize parts from, and they don't want to get these things mixed up. So the things that are working, and at the time that they're working, you have to label it with working so that people can trust it, because if there's a life-threatening situation, or you don't want to get it mixed up and have someone's life be at stake, right? This is probably the most important thing, which is establish empathy with the user. And the best way is to actually walk in their shoes. This is a case where the designer is trying to understand what goes on in a hospital. And so in order to understand, they actually lay in the bed and got treated as if they were a patient, but they had a video camera going throughout the time, and they realized that this patient is actually being left alone for hours at a time, and during that entire time all they're looking at is the ceiling. And they are getting more and more pessimistic about whether they're going to get well or not, and they're finding that the patients who believe that they will get well are somehow getting well faster than the ones who are feeling kind of despondent about their own chances of getting better, and the conditions are not created such that they are going to feel better. And this, of course, is in the US, but it's worth understanding that this is something that unless you actually lay down and look to the ceiling, you would not know, right? Now, anything that you will provide ultimately has to be picked up and adopted by people. They are not going to adopt anything that does not make sense to them, and they will adopt things very fast if they're excited about it. So it's very important to understand what is it that people get excited by. So what ethnography allows you to do using these principles are to establish an open-ended conversation where you go into the field, understand what's going on, get into the minds of people, identify different types of stakeholders, speak to all of them, and ask the question why over and over till you come to the real reasons why the problem is happening. And you're just like that iceberg, the things that people are saying in the first place are the things that are very explicit and anyone can state, but it's this path of open-ended conversation and being very observant that gets you to the very, very powerful insights that you will then turn into your design directives and design for. Thank you.